But one thing I've always done is I never equated likes to business. I could be posting something and maybe it gets 20 likes, and somebody else might post something that gets 500 likes, but it's the conversion to business that matters.
I'm Sylvia Garibaldi, founder and CEO of a well-established marketing training and done-for-you services company, tailored specifically for the modern legal and financial professional worldwide. While it's taken some trial and error to figure out which methods get the best results for professionals who are looking to grow their practices, fast forward to today, my team and I have nailed down and perfected a process that has helped so many of our clients consistently achieve outstanding results and create a legacy for their practices. I created the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast to give you simple, actionable, non-salesy, and results-driven marketing to grow your legal or financial practice like so many of our clients have. If you're a lawyer, mediator, financial, or divorce professional who is looking to become highly visible and wants to create a practice that makes an impact, then you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 112 of the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast. I'm your host, Sylvia Garibaldi. Today, I'm joined by Leanne Townsend, a family lawyer with over 25 years of experience, former assistant Crown attorney and domestic violence co-lead, a divorce strategist for high net worth families, podcast host, and co-founding member of the Divorce Coaches Association of Ontario. I have to say, I was genuinely impressed not just by the depth of Leanne's experience, but how intentionally she has built her personal brand with authenticity and professionalism. And I especially appreciated her perspective on authenticity versus vanity metrics, which is all about why likes and views don't necessarily equal business, and why credibility, consistency, and real relationships are what actually converts. So if you're a lawyer, a mediator, or a divorce professional who wants to grow your visibility, build trust with referral partners, and attract the right clients without compromising your standards, then you really need to listen in. This is a thoughtful, practical conversation about reputation, positioning, accreditation, and building a respected brand in a high-trust profession. Let's dive in. Leanne, thank you so much for being on the show today. I have to say I was really impressed with your experience in the field, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show. So not only do you bring over 25 years of experience as a divorce lawyer and strategist for high net worth families, but because of how you intentionally use your voice to educate, to empower, and literally change the people's lives that are going through separation and divorce. And I think that's a really important area I wanted to touch on. And I think equally important for our listeners to understand about you is that you began your career as an assistant Crown attorney serving for 16 years, including as domestic violence co-lead. And I think all of this really just to say that this experience has really given you a deep understanding of human conflict, resilience, and more importantly, I think the compassion that you bring to your work. So I want to congratulate you for that. And so your journey has taken you to private practice as a family law partner for a Bay Street firm, and later founding your own practice before joining Benmor Family Law Group. So I'm really excited to have you here today. And I believe what sets you apart is how you've really expanded your reach as a divorce coach, a speaker, an educator, hosting the Divorce Well and Divorce Explained podcasts, and really intentionally sharing your expertise in the media, which is another big area for you, all while building this personal brand of yours that really connects with people well before they even become clients. And I think that's really important for our listeners to understand. I'm excited about unpacking this today. So welcome to the show, Leanne.
Thank you, Sylvia. I'm really excited to be here. So thank you for inviting me to come on the podcast.
So you've developed a strong personal brand from podcasts to media appearances, and that really reaches people well before they even become clients. And as I mentioned, that's a really important point. So how did you begin building that presence?
A number of years ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago, I started using social media. And at the time, like Instagram was kind of my biggest focus, but there was Facebook and then LinkedIn as well. And I remember at the time, like my kids were kind of like, they were teenagers and they were like, Mom, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you on Instagram? Like, you're too old. Why are you on there? And something about my messaging just seemed to connect with people. And I ended up growing a following. And then my kids went from, thinking this was ridiculous to actually being impressed with me because I far surpassed the number of followers that they had. And I was one of the first lawyers, I think, at least in like the GTA where I practice, to really use social media as a marketing tool. I found during COVID, a lot more lawyers and law firms got into it and now everyone's on it on some level. But at the time, I think a lot of lawyers turned their nose up at social media. They thought they were above it. And I was using it to connect with people. And so I stood out because there wasn't, as I say, a lot of other lawyers using it. And I'm a very authentic person. Like it's very hard for me to be fake about anything. And so anything I put out, it really is genuine to who I am. And so I was able to just connect with people and what I was saying seemed to resonate. And I grew a following from there. And then I got invited to go on a lot of podcasts. And I always remember this saying, and I've heard it be attributed to different people, but the saying was something like, if you're offered a seat on a rocket ship, don't ask what seat, just get on. And that's was always kind of my philosophy is just if an opportunity comes my way, just take it. As long as it's aligned with my values and whatnot. I'm not going to do something that I think is unethical or the wrong messaging, but I take it. And so I did a lot of podcast interviews and then I started doing my own podcast and went from there. And then Steve Benmor, who I work with now, he and I started during COVID, we started doing a podcast. And so things just grew from there.
So I love how you talk about building the social media presence. Because by the way, you are much further ahead than most attorneys, because this is the work that we do with attorneys is really help them build their social media. That's one aspect of it. So they are starting to catch up. Congratulations on getting far ahead of your competitors. But also, I like the way you talked about your social media being authentic to you. And I think that's another important point that our listeners should really understand is that when you're building a social media profile, as you've indicated, it had to be authentic to you and your values. And I think that has really allowed people to be attracted to your work, as you said, because you're sharing how you do business, but in an authentic way. And from your social media, you said you started to get inquiries for speaking engagements, right? So your social media built your presence. So I love the way you tied that all together. So when you think about this work that you've been doing for years now, a lot of people think when they start posting on social media that it's just this instant thing. What's your opinion on that in terms of what it takes to build that profile before you start to get questions and engagement come your way?
I mean, it takes time because just like in real life, networking and that sort of thing is about relationships. Social media is also like about relationships. And so you have to engage with people as well. Like you can't just kind of, I've posted or I had my social media person make a post and not engage with it. People would send me DMs and I would respond to DMs or if people comment on my post, I comment back or people who I feel like I'm starting to get to know, I would comment on their posts. And a lot of these people as well, there's a lot of people I met and ended up meeting in real life. Like they felt a connection and we ended up meeting for a coffee or a lunch or a dinner or whatever. And my network really grew from there just by spending the time trying to build a relationship just from following each other on social media.
Another important point that you raise is creating that engagement. So you're not posting and ghosting. You are posting and creating engagement that allows the watchers, the listeners to really pay attention to what you're doing, but they feel like you're paying attention to them as well, which is, as you've mentioned, allowed you to grow your network and connect further and build relationships with your audience. So I hear this question a lot, like I'm really busy as a lawyer. How do I find the time to engage and to post and all that? So do you have any recommendations for professionals out there on how you did that? Because you've been doing this for a while now, building your profile.
What I do is I'll set sort of a time of the day where I'll go on my social media and check things and spend 30 minutes engaging with people. And so I think that's a way of doing it is to just build it into your schedule for a set period of time. But I think that if you don't engage with people authentically, then they're not going to feel the same connection with you. And one of the reasons why social media has worked so well for me as a marketing tool and a business building tool is that a lot of people are intimidated by lawyers. A lot of lawyers, like the stereotype of lawyers that we're arrogant, we're not very nice. And a lot of people feel intimidated. And I think that social media allowed people got to know me and they got to know my personality. I could build a trust with them. And it kind of lowered the wall around me, I suppose. Like it made me seem just like a regular person. They weren't intimidated by me. And so they felt more comfortable reaching out to me if they or someone they knew needed family law legal advice. Because even though I'm like not necessarily a friend, I kind of seem friendly maybe, or they just feel less intimidated. And I think that helps a lot.
That's an excellent point. I really love that. I think you've lowered the barriers to the know, like, and trust factor when you are on social media and you are social and you're engaging and you're creating a conversation rather than posting and ghosting. So I think that's an excellent point that some lawyers do have that reputation and friendly, but professional, right? And you
Yeah.
know your stuff. And so there's this question about being friendly or too nice on social media. But I think you do it beautifully, like the way you talk about what you do, but you still keep it professional enough for people to know, like, and trust you. And lowering those barriers, as you said, is people don't really talk about that too much, that being online and using social media and other content platforms allow you to humanize what you do and relate to the public and also to referral partners who want to do business with you, right? So, yeah, that's an excellent point. When you think about everything that you've done so far, podcasting, speaking, writing, which activity do you think was the most effective in helping people find you and trust you? Like if you had to really look at all of your work out there, what would you say was one of the key factors to help you
Um, I'd
progress?
say it was two. So I do think like my consistency on social media made a difference. Like I think that's initially how I initially got an audience. I started making more connections, expanding my network, and that was through Instagram and is the main sort of tool I used. And then from there, I think the podcast, because I've had a lot of people come to me as clients over the years and say, "Oh, I listened to your podcast. Like your podcast has been really helpful." And I have two podcasts really. Although Divorcing Well, which is when I started on my own, I haven't been doing so much in the last year, but I did it for quite a few years. I've been more focused on the one I do with Steve now. But I just have had a lot of people say that they've listened to the podcast and they found it really helpful. And that's why they reached out to me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. The podcast is a really powerful tool. And I think it's underestimated about how you can build your profile using that. So I'm glad you shared that with the listeners. So here's another comment that I hear often from professionals, and that is that they feel uncomfortable becoming visible and putting their voice out there and sharing their perspective. So we get into conversations about they question who they are. Are they the right expert to get out there and start speaking about what they can do? A little bit of imposter syndrome. So it's what I call a marketing mindset block, where there are professionals that feel like there's a block that's prohibiting them from getting out there. Did you ever experience that? And if you did, how did you tackle that?
I have experienced it. For a long time, I didn't have that. Like I just had content just like I'd just wake up in the morning and have all kinds of content in my head. I don't know why my creative juices were flowing for many years where I just had lots of ideas on what I wanted to say and do. And I've generally tried to stay out of controversy. Like I don't post things about politics. I don't post things on controversial topics. I try to stay away from that. But I have had periods over the years where I've felt more private. I'll just share it. My kids would laugh like, we're at a restaurant. Oh, like, let's put a photo in my story or I would share a lot of things like about my own life, not just legal stuff. I was very open. And I'd say Um, Over the last few years, I've felt a little more private. I don't post as much about my personal life as I used to. And I think that it does impact things a little bit. I think for people who are like just always totally open with their personal lives, I think sometimes that can create more followers or more interest. But one thing I've always done is I never equated likes to business. I could be posting something and maybe it gets 20 likes and somebody else might post something that gets 500 likes, but it's the conversion to business that matters. It's not how many people are liking, because social media can be a bit of a circus, right? Like people who are like can be a bit of a train wreck. They might be getting lots of views and lots of likes or, comments or whatever, but it might not be equating into like actual business. I always want to appear professional. So that's always at the forefront of anything I'm posting. And I'm a mom and I don't want to do anything that's going to embarrass my children. And that's always at the forefront. And so I found like over the last few years where TikToks become more of a thing and people are dancing and they're doing all kinds of like crazy things. Like I never got into that because I just felt it wasn't consistent with my professional image. And so I think sometimes doing those sorts of things, as they say, can create more views on a video and generate more interest. Like to me, if I saw some lawyer doing some weird thing,
Yeah.
that's not going to make me want to go out and hire them. It would be the opposite. I'd be like, you know what? Like, I don't really know how professional that person is. So I don't think I would want to have a consultation with them. I think that sometimes people get caught up in the stat numbers in terms of likes and views and that sort of thing. But it's how many people are actually picking up the phone or emailing you and how much business are you getting from it?
So, yeah, you've hit like a gold mine of information there because this is something I talk about all the time that there is this misconception. You are so on it when you say that don't be concerned with the likes or the views because the likes and the views can be misleading. So I see colleagues, I see other professionals that are posting, what I call lifestyle pictures. Maybe they're sitting down on a beach and they get like 100 likes, and most of it are coming from their colleagues. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's great. That's built awareness. But would I hire you as a lawyer if I saw you sitting on a beach and I see all your colleagues liking those posts? And did that convert? And chances are that it did not convert. So people are very misled when they see posts like that. So what we see is that, yes, humanizing your content, but also educational content that makes the viewers understand who you are and how you can help them is much more powerful. So tell me, because this is actually going to be my next question, is how do you see the conversion happening? So social media builds awareness and you're educating the public and referral partners. And you're not concentrating on the likes or the views, which I think is a really important point. How are you judging your visibility then? So you're looking at inquiries coming in, maybe speaking engagements. And so talk to me about that and what you've seen with the visibility and how that's led to the conversion of clients and inquiries coming in.
I look at it in terms of, when a new inquiry comes to my business, somebody looking for a consultation, I'll always ask, how did you find my name? And it's not the best tracking, but it kind of gives you an idea of, where they came from. And I find a lot of them have come from some form of social media or the podcast, or they were referred by somebody else who follows me on social media or listen to the podcast. Maybe they didn't themselves, but somebody gave them my name who does. And so I've been able to see just by asking that question, that's where people have found me. And then I know, like just in terms of invitations that I get to go on other podcasts or to speak at a certain event, it's from social media and even like work related opportunities. Like the firm I'm at with Steve Benmor, I first met his wife, Samantha, through social media. She followed me on Instagram and reached out to connect with me and we had like a coffee or something. I had one with her and her mother because she works with her mother and we connected. And then from there, that was how I met Steve. And I've found that just my professional network, like I have a lot of real estate agents, investment advisors, mortgage brokers, therapists, divorce coaches, like people in my referral network. And a lot of those, the original way we connected was through social media. And for me, it works. Like, I'll be honest, I prefer doing stuff on social media than sometimes going to a wine and cheese networking event in person. Like, I do those too. But I find those are, for me, they're very fake because I feel like I'm just there and I've got to make small talk and we all pretend we're interested in everybody else. And meanwhile, most people aren't really interested in you at all, but they're looking for, trying to build a relationship, I guess, so that you can be referral sources. But I've found for me that the people I've just met through social media, I've built a big referral network, and usually we do meet at some point, like whether it's in person or whether we,
Yeah.
just connect on Zoom and chat or however it might be. We have that kind of one-on-one time that furthers the relationship. And then we usually end up seeing each other at events and whatnot. But I don't know, for me, that's just worked better to who I am than whereas some other people are just, they're huge extroverts and they're masters at going to networking events. And for them, that works really, really well. I don't know, this is probably not even in response to your question, but I was going to say part of what has worked for me is just figuring out what I like, what I don't like, and then working with what I like more so that I'm more apt to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I absolutely love that. I couldn't agree with you more in terms of building that network online or through social media, but then also taking it offline to meet people in person when it's appropriate to do so. So, the engine of online marketing is so powerful that you have an extension to a network that you would never be able to really reach in person, right? I mean, let's be realistic. So you've used that beautifully. You've built your network online, and then you take it offline when it's appropriate to build those relationships. And I think there's nothing wrong with finding your lane and deciding what works best for you. You're right. Some people like to meet people in person more often. Some people like to do more online. I can relate more to what you're saying. That's how I've built my network globally, is through social media. And yes, I do take it offline and meet people in person when it's appropriate to do so. But I would have never been able to build my network just like you if I wasn't utilizing the online channel. So I think that that's so spot on. I guess I want to kind of transition into another area of your practice, and that is divorce coaching. So, when did divorce coaching become part of your work? And when did you decide to add it along with your services that you offer now?
So it's a funny story with that. So for the first half of my career, I was an assistant crown attorney. So I was prosecuting criminals. I wasn't doing family law. I was involved in domestic violence cases. Like I was the domestic violence lead in the Toronto West Crown's office for many years. So there's an element of family law to it, but it's primarily criminal law. And when I got out of that and I went into private practice, I initially did some criminal law, but I didn't like being on the defense side. And so I was looking at other things that might interest me. And I initially started thinking, maybe I'd like to be a divorce coach. Initially, I started doing that. I've been through a lot of things in my own personal life. I've learned different modalities of different things. And so I always have brought that to anything I do because I've had trauma and I've had to heal from it and things like that. And so I've always been empathetic to people who have their own trauma. But so when I went into divorce coaching initially, I was sort of drawing on all like these different modalities that I had learned through my own experience. But then I found because I was a lawyer, people were really wanting me to give legal advice. And as a divorce coach, you're not giving legal advice, you're in a different lane. Then I started thinking maybe it makes sense for me to cross over to actually practicing family law. I'd always had an interest in it and had done a little bit of it very early in my career. So I took some CPD just to make sure my knowledge was up to date. And then I just started doing family law and that grew from there. And then at that time, the divorce coaching lessened. I did a little bit here and there, but I was more in the family lawyer lane. And then most recently working at Benmor Family Law Group, we do divorce coaching there. It's more of a legal coaching in a way than what somebody who's not a lawyer would do as a divorce coach. So I started doing more of that again. And then Stephen were founding members of the Divorce Coaches Association of Ontario and building that up. And so it's sort of growing from there. More of my time is still spent as a lawyer doing like law work as a lawyer. But I do have coaching clients and I quite enjoy it. I actually find that divorce coaching is in some ways more rewarding than the lawyering because the lawyering, it's a very tough job being a family law lawyer because people are just mostly not happy with you because they're not happy with the situation they're in. It's a broken system. You're never going to fulfill their expectations. You have to manage the client's expectations. And I always kind of liken the divorce lawyer as like the man in the arena. They're the ones in there getting sand thrown on them and kicked in the face, scratched, and everyone's criticizing them. They're the easy person for everybody to point the finger at and criticize. Whereas the divorce coach is more like you're in a supportive role. You're supporting that person who's going through divorce. And I feel like you're able to feel more like you're helping them and they're appreciating your help rather than navigating them through this broken system that is more of a legal system and not a justice system, which is what the lawyer is doing. And so I find it more rewarding because I feel like I have more of a relationship with the client and there's more of an emotional connection, I guess.
So do you lawyer and are a divorce coach to the same client, or is that a separate service? Like
It's a
how does
separate
that work?
service. If I'm a lawyer for somebody, I always say you get my coachy personality as part of, you get the
S-
benefit of that by having me as your lawyer. But if I'm retained exclusively as a divorce coach, then that's what I am. I'm not lawyering, unless it's like legal coaching. We call it divorce coaching at Benmor Family Law Group, but it is different because it's just a limited scope retainer where I'm still giving legal advice. So it is lawyering, but I'm not fully retained. It's just the client is navigating their own matter and I'm just giving them advice or strategy as needed.
So I would see that as a real plus for anyone going through divorce to hire someone like you who has that kind of background and credentialing because as you said, you have both of best worlds, right? So you've got the compassion, you know how to lead them through the emotional side, and yet you understand the legal side as well. So I think that's a pretty powerful way to build a brand.
I think it can be. I mean, I think it is what's helped me and the types of client, like we all attract, I think, the types of clients who are maybe similar to us. And so I tend to attract clients who I would say like they're nice people. And I tend to attract clients like I'm not an emotionally needy person, but I tend to attract clients who need maybe more support from their lawyer. They don't want a lawyer who is less touchy-feely as maybe I'm trying to think the right words to use. Like they need
Mm.
someone who they feel hears them and validates their emotions. And not all lawyers have that as a strength. But then some cases need that pit bull who's just going to go in and fight tooth and nail. And that personality type might come across as less empathetic or compassionate or validating to the client's emotions. And so a client who needs that pit bull type of personality, then I might not be the right fit for them. But a client
Mhm.
who wants to feel heard and have somebody who understands where they're coming from, understands what it's like to be in a relationship where you're not treated properly and why you stay in that relationship, especially with my background in domestic violence and whatnot. Like, I
Mm.
understand that. I understand why people, particularly women, stay in abusive relationships and tolerate it and how it whittles down their self esteem and how they feel disempowered and powerless to leave. I really fundamentally understand someone who's in that position. And so when I'm handling their matter, I'm not going to say something that's insensitive. At least I hope I'm not. Whereas I think a lawyer who has less understanding of that might inadvertently say something that is insensitive and makes the client feel like their lawyer doesn't really understand their situation.
Or belittled in some
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
minimize their
Yep.
feelings being minimized or their experience being minimized. And, often victims of abuse, like they've been gaslit for so long. Like the last thing they want is to be working with a lawyer who they feel is minimizing or gaslighting them in some fashion. And I find cases where the opposing party is this abusive person. Often they find a lawyer who is that narcissistic type of person as well. And it's just interesting how like attracts like.
Yeah, that is interesting. So you are a founding member of the Divorce Coaches Association of Ontario, as well as you've become an accredited divorce coach. So can you tell us a little bit about that and the process?
Yeah, so the Divorce Coaches Association of Ontario was established just last year. So it's a newer organization. And we established it because we wanted there to be some consistency and level of expertise required of people who are divorce coaches because it's a growing industry. And I very much believe divorce coaches have a very helpful role to play in the divorce world but there's a varying levels of training experience. Anyone can call themselves a divorce coach. And so we established the Divorce Coaches Association of Ontario because we wanted there to be some sort of consistency and accreditation for people to have to go through so that if someone is out there and they want to work with a divorce coach, they know that that person has at least met certain criteria to be accredited. And so we established certain parameters around what's required in terms of experience and training and whatnot. And I had to apply to the DCAO and fill out an application and submit references and submit other documentation, including my resume and background. I had to apply to become accredited. And then I had to sit in on an interview where 3 members of the board asked me a series of questions and I respond to them. And then they evaluated my application and submitted their recommendation to the board as to whether I met the criteria for accreditation. And I did. And so from there, I was accredited. And right now, there's people who are being accredited. The goal is that more and more people are going to apply to be accredited. We're a growing organization. And again, I think that divorce coaches have like a really important role to play with people who are going through divorce. I think that they can offer tremendous support and save them a lot of money, which is really important for people as well. But I think it's important that, like any industry, that there be some sort of criteria that people have to meet in order to be accredited, and so that people can be assured that the person they're working with has some minimal training and experience.
Yeah, I love that because you're absolutely right. I mean, anybody can become a divorce coach, but I think the question is, how do you find the right divorce coach with the right credentials? And so, if anyone listening to this is in need of a divorce coach, like going to the Divorce Coaches Association of Ontario is a great place to find those accredited professionals that have gone through that structure and that interview process and are still continuing to build their skills, because that's going to be important as the industry is changing, as you know, every day. And so, being able to keep up with that accreditation is absolutely critical. So I kind of see that as a differentiator too for divorce coaches in terms of helping them grow their practice when they've got that accreditation. Would you agree with that? Do you see that as an asset?
Oh, absolutely. I see it as a big asset because if they're going to get work with lawyers, and I think it's a two-way referrals, divorce coaches can refer people to lawyers, but family lawyers can also refer people to divorce coaches. And I know I'm not going to refer clients to somebody who's not accredited. That's important to me. And we live in this weird world right now, between Google and Chat GPT. And this is one of my personal frustrations is I find when you go on social media now, you see all kinds of people speaking authoritatively on all kinds of topics, and they have no credentials whatsoever. And they're speaking to this audience, and people are listening to them. And some of these people have large followings, and they really don't always know what they're talking about. And it's dangerous. But anyone can go on social media, like right now, and talk about divorce, for example, and have no credentials, nothing, and be espousing all sorts of things. And people could listen to that and follow that, whatever this person is saying, and that could be harmful. And so I think that accreditation is really, really important in anything, like, well, not just divorce coaching, but in any number of things. So I think it's so important, like somebody going through their own divorce, that's not enough of a qualification to be able to coach people. You need something more than that. And that's like often kind of where people come from. They went through their own divorce. Their intention is good. They want to help other people, but what happened in your own personal divorce may not be the situation across the board for other people. And so you need more than your own personal experience in order to be able to speak authoritatively and help people with something.
Yeah. And I think becoming accredited through the DCAO is a fabulous way of building the know, like, and trust factor with those referral partners who are going to be the ones that are referring to you. And they need to know that you know what you're talking about and that you have the background, the experience, and that you're keeping up with what you need to know about the industry, especially other lawyers who want to refer to divorce coaches, therapists, financial planners, and they're looking at divorce coaching and they're like, so what do they really do? And can anyone become a divorce coach? And so that kind of diminishes the power of divorce coaching industry altogether. So I love how DCAO has started to put this structure around it and saying, hey, if you want to become accredited, you need to come see us. And this is the way we're going to help you get there. So it's building the industry up and creating that longevity that we know is absolutely necessary for this industry. So, as we wrap up this session, is there a single piece of advice that you would want to give to any professional that's listening here about growing their practice? Anything you'd like to leave our audience with?
I would say marketing is really important. You could be a great lawyer, but if you don't know how to market, you're limited in what you're going to be able to accomplish. I remember a senior lawyer once saying to me that, he would always ask junior lawyers if they were given $5,000 for marketing, how would they use it? And a lot of them didn't know what to say. They were dumbfounded by the question. And I think when you're a professional, your bread and butter activity may not be as a marketer, but marketing is fundamental to business. And I would just say, like, pick one or two types of marketing or ways of marketing that you enjoy and be consistent and do it over and over and over again. But you don't have to do everything. You don't have to be all things to all people, but pick one or two things that you enjoy because you're more liable to do it if you enjoy it and just stick with it. Consistency is what works.
Wow, that's really sound advice, Leanne. Thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been a real pleasure. And you've shared so many practical insights and real world advice that I know our listeners are going to absolutely love. And I think just talking also about the importance of accreditation and standards for divorce coaches has really given our listeners some golden nuggets about how this work is evolving and why it matters for professionals and the clients that they serve.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your podcast.